So we're going to get started. Welcome everyone to the first meeting of the Civic Engagement Commission. I'm really, truly excited to embark on this exciting new journey in New York City with you. This is going to be really wonderful. And I wanted to actually begin by acknowledging the members of the public who are here today attending this meeting. We're really glad that you're here with us, and wanted to just note that this meeting is not a hearing. So while we welcome you to observe, we won't have the opportunity today to give you a chance to offer testimony. And I wanted to ask if you could, if you are a member of the public, I left a sign-in sheet outside, so before you go, if you haven't already done it, could you please sign in? And I also left name tags for you to fill out as well. And also wanted to acknowledge, are there any members of the press in attendance today? Okay, thank you. Want to thank very much the Landmarks Preservation Commission for use of this conference room and the public hearing room, and also wanted to give you a couple of logistics about the space. If you need the restroom, they're outside the hallway. To the right when you step out is the men's room, to the left is the women's room. The code for women is 235, for men it's 215. Unfortunately, there's no Wi-Fi in this space, so we won't be able to get on the internet, but maybe that's a good thing for a meeting. And also, one note, you'll notice these mics, so whenever it's your opportunity to speak, please push the button, and then you can turn it off, whenever you're done. So to all of the commissioners, I really want to congratulate you again on your appointment, and also want to thank you very much individually and as a group for taking on the responsibility to serve. And want to acknowledge also that we are videotaping this meeting as part of the open meeting guidelines so that the public can access this meeting afterwards. And future meetings also may be live streamed. We have Spanish language interpreters here today, and interpretation will also be provided at future meetings upon request. There will also be American Sign Language for those who request it. I've spoken to each of you one-on-one, and I thought it would be good for us to just go around and introduce yourself so that everyone gets to know each other better. Just for an FYI, we're still waiting for the appointments from borough presidents, Staten Island and Manhattan to come to us. So we're just going to go around, and would like to ask you to state your name and affiliation and say a little bit about why you're excited about the Civic Engagement Commission and what motivated you to join. Some of the things I asked you individually, but it'd be great to have the room, have sharing in the room. So I'm going to turn off my mic now, and then I'm going to go to my right with Donna as the first person. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Donna Gill. I live in Manhattan. I'm on Community Board 10. The reason that I am part of this, because I feel that there needs to be more involvement with the citizens to get the community more involved in things. And I thought that this was a great idea when the voters decided that they wanted it, and now that I wanted to be part of the process to make it happen. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Linda Lee. During the day, I'm the Executive Director of KCS, Korean Community Services. We have several locations throughout New York City, providing lots of different social services to the community, including senior centers, immigration. We're the only Korean nonprofit that actually has a mental health outpatient clinic that's state licensed, which took me a while, but we finally got it done. And that's been a great service for our community. And everything from immigration, ESL, all sorts of services. And I'm also part of CB11 out in Queens. And it was actually through my work with KCS that I became more civically involved, because I realized how much of policy and legislation and civic participation actually influences how I deliver my services as a nonprofit organization, how funding streams go. And so to me, I felt like it was really important to bring a lot of the local issues to this commission. And so when we had the opportunity to join, I was excited to be part of it. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Anthony Harmon. I'm by day with the United Federation of Teachers. By night, I'm the president of the NAACP, the New York City chapter. What brought me here to this commission was my work and my belief in civic participation for a host of reasons, particularly in regards to young people and how do we service, create better service for young people.
Hi, I'm Anastasia Somoza. By day, I serve as the first community liaison to disabled New Yorkers for Speaker Corey Johnson. In that position, I also cover all issues relating to civil and human rights. And when I was asked to join by the speaker, I was honored and chose to accept. For a lot of personal reasons, actually, because I've always been really involved in my community since I was little, and I've been really passionate about disability advocacy and teaching people that if you are really passionate about something, that individuals and communities have the power to change it and make a difference. And so I wanted to join to continue as a way of continuing to do that for the community in which I live.
Hello, my name is Jose Hernandez. I am affiliated with the national organization United Spinal Association, and I am the president of the local chapter. What brings me here today is the same as Anastasia Somoza. We as individuals with disabilities need to be more civically engaged, and hopefully through this post we can bring more education and more accessibility and more individuals with disabilities out there to vote. So yeah, I'm excited for that. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Holly Bonner. I'm from Staten Island. And I am the Staten Island Borough Coordinator for Vision Services for the Blind and Visually Impaired. I'm also an adjunct professor at Metropolitan College of New York. I teach psychology and sociology. I come to this position really through my seminary school. I'm a doctoral candidate for my doctorate in ministry at New York Theological Seminary, and they brought the position to my attention. So I come to it as both a mother who is a disabled woman, a professional who happens to be blind, and from a faith-based perspective. I've spent a majority of my career as a social worker, working in various nonprofits, and when I lost my eyesight a few years ago, kind of came into looking at civic engagement from a different lens. So I'm hoping going forward that I can both help advocate for parents who have disabilities, get people in the community aware of some of the other nonprofits. We have so many wonderful nonprofits in New York City that people just don't know about, that we can build connections with them. And also from that faith-based perspective, we need to unite and build bridges with people of various faith communities throughout the 5 boroughs. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Chuck Apelian. I'm from Queens. I was born in the Bronx and then spent most of my life in Queens. And I'm a member of Community Board 7 in Queens. And I guess one big part of my life has been consensus building. In my professional and in my community life, it's been a lot about consensus. I spent about 30 years, 40 years in the marketing and advertising business, so you're constantly working with teams as far as producing products and producing programs and campaigns. I also do a lot in land use consulting work, and again, that's all about building consensus. And in my role on the community board, I rose to the vice chairman of the board, and part was to establish relationships with elected and appointed officials, work on them with policy, and also work with the community as far as, you know, integrating that together as far as what maybe the layperson may or may not know and what the government, you know, may be wanting to do, and trying to bridge those gaps together. So this is just an extension of what I've been doing. So thank you and welcome to everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Eve Barron. I'm the Brooklyn Borough President's appointee. I'm an urban planner. I've worked in government and advocacy and academia. I'm currently the chair of the Graduate Center for Planning and the Environment at Pratt Institute. And my career as a planner has been primarily about providing technical assistance and support to communities that want to plan for their own neighborhoods. And I've been interested in, decoding our planning processes and making them open, more democratic, getting more people involved in local decision making. And so that's what I'd like to bring to this table. Thank you.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Murad Awauda. I'm a mayoral appointee. I've been involved in community organizing and community activism for a little bit over 2 decades, working through environmental justice, climate justice, immigration justice, civil rights and voting rights here in New York City, New York State, and across the nation. Really excited to be part of this commission. I look forward to making democracy as transparent and accessible as possible, and seeing how this commission can ensure that there is language access at every aspect of civic engagement in the city.
Hi, I'm Amy Breedlove. I'm also an appointee of the mayors. I have a number of roles that I play. One is president of the Cobble Hill Association in Brooklyn, where we have a lot of land use issues. It's a landmark district. And then also I work at Urban Quotient, which we work on developing affordable and supportive housing in New York City. And I'm also a member of the board of Stonewall Community Development Corporation, which works on LGBTQ senior housing in New York City. On the commission, I'm really excited to get people involved and for them to understand that they can actually create change in New York City. It's not that difficult. You just have to get involved and understand how to work with elected officials, city agencies, and other groups in order to accomplish something. So I'm really excited to work with all of you and to work with Sarah and get something done. Thank you.
Lillian, are you on the call? No, okay. All right, so I will also just briefly, Annetta, you're here. We're just going around introducing ourselves, so if you could, and say.
Okay, well, you should be able to hear me because it's right in front of me. I hear you clearly. I can hear you when people are speaking, I guess, from far. Okay, great. Good afternoon, everybody. My apologies for being late. So my name is Aneta Citran. I am the executive director of Chaya Community Development Corporation. I am a mayoral appointee. I am really thrilled to be serving on this commission. I served on the Charter Revision Commission that led to this, and so it's really just fantastic to be part of the continuity, and really thrilled to be, working with each of you, and looking forward to getting to know you, and looking forward to Sarah's leadership to really see the fruition and the implementation of the mandates that came out of the vote, what New Yorkers asked us to do. So yeah, that's it.
Lillian, can you introduce yourself to the group?
Can you introduce yourself to the group? Lillian?
Lillian. She might be on
Lillian,
mute.
are you still there?
Okay. I also actually just, oh, okay. Thank you so much. So I think I've spoken to each of you, but I wanted to just introduce myself again, Sarah Said, and I've been working in the mayor's office now for nearly 4 years, working on Muslim community engagement, and I'm really thrilled to be transitioning into this new role and working with all of you. And I was trying to think, what are some sort of things that are important to me about this commission? And one of the things I thought of was just some early memories I had of volunteering that I think really gave me a civic awareness. When I was in high school, I worked, volunteered at Memorial Sloan Kettering. It was the, time in the early 80s, and so that was really sort of the moment there was an AIDS epidemic, and just getting the chance to interact with patients at Memorial Sloan Kettering was very profound. And then after college, I decided I wanted to clean up this lot that was a dumping ground across the street from my house, and the ability to sort of gather the community together. I think those are really foundational moments for me in terms of building a sense of like a collective, of who we are as people living here in the city and nationally, and a sense of shared responsibility that I think is very central to how democracies operate. So I'm looking forward to also helping to cultivate that as well. I wanted to also acknowledge the staff who are here in different capacities, either helping our commissioners or helping the commission. So if you wouldn't mind, if you could just state your name quickly, please, and your affiliation so that we just know who you are. If you really don't want to, it's okay, but I thought it was important to just acknowledge.
So this is, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
This is Jade. She is not on the commission. She works for me as my personal care assistant and asked me to introduce her.
Thank you.
Hi, Angeline Superable. I work on Democracy NYC at the mayor's office. Thanks.
Fausto. Tu nombre. Dile tu nombre. That's Fausto Romero. He is my PCA as well.
Oh, that's great. By the way, he can, if he's interested, he can have interpretation, because we have Spanish interpretation if he'd like to.
Quiero oír en español todo. Tienen atrás. Do they have speaker or headphones?
They should have a headset, right, for the Spanish interpretation.
Tengo que traer uno.
Go ahead.
Voy a traer y pídele uno.
Hi everyone, my name is Lee Welling. I am an attorney at the law department. So I'm here to advise generally. So great to meet this amazing group, and congratulations on the first meeting.
Okay, so thank you again, everyone, for being a part of this historic moment. And I'm really, really excited. So I think the way that we all work together, to me, is just as important as what we do. So I'm really hoping that we as a body, can develop a strong collaboration. And one of the things I wanted to do, with your permission, is just share out all of your emails and phone numbers with each other. Does anyone have any objections to that? So I'll be sending out an email with everyone's contact information. In the next section, I wanted to just, again, get ourselves thinking a little bit more about what it is that we're trying to achieve here. What is the vision and the nature of the work that we're trying to do. And so I gave each of you index cards, or you can use your computer to do this part of the meeting. But I wanted to try to set a common framework for what civic engagement means, because I think it means different things to different people. And this is not going to be the end of the conversation. It's just sort of the beginning of the conversation. We're going to collect this from you at the end or when you're done. So if you could just put your name on the index card. And I wanted to ask you if you could come up with just, when you think of the word civic engagement, what are 3 or 4 words or ideas that come to your mind, right? And I want you to think about what are sort of the underlying values, knowledge, or actions that underlie civic engagement. What is it that we're trying to promote among New Yorkers? So if you could just write down a few words, ideas that come to the top of your head. We'll take a few minutes and then we'll have, we'll share a little bit of that. I'm going to just give you one more minute. Okay. I want to acknowledge Councilmember Bradlander for being here. Thank you for coming today. And so I thought we would just go around and we don't have to start with you, Donna. We can go to my left this time. And I'd like to ask you to just share one of the ideas that you put down, and then we'll see if, other people thought of the same thing.
One of the things I was sort of ruminating on was civic participation versus civic engagement. So civic participation as voting or jury duty, those are the sort of basic things that we should be doing as our civic duty. And then civic engagement, how to get people to be more engaged in the process, thinking about how to get them to meetings, how to get them to protests.
I'm gonna stop you right there.
Yeah.
So I wanna see, I know that everyone wrote down a lot of things, and I wanna see like what the commonalities are. So the first thing you said was civic participation, right? That was the first thing that came to your head. So did anyone else think of that? If you could just either voice your yes or raise your hand. So a couple of people, you had like 6 or 7 people came up with that. So participation is something that's going to be very important, right? How to get people interested, enthusiastic about participation. So let's keep going. And what I'm hoping to do with these cards actually is to create, I don't know if you're familiar with a word cloud, but it is something you can put together that shows you like the words that are most common or more emphasized are bigger, and the other words are smaller. So I'm hoping to put that kind of thing together and share it with you, in the future. So, Murad.
I also had participation down. I would say that my top lines would be community building, meaningful engagement, and building people power, as well as participation.
Okay, so let's pick one of those. People power. Did anyone else have people power? There we go, 2 people. Well, that's great. Awesome. Okay, so let's keep going.
Sorry, I just want to check, make sure that's working. I've been thinking about community engagement as collective action in the public realm with an expectation of accountability and impact.
Okay, anyone else think about something like that? Okay. Okay, great. So let's keep going around the table. It's okay, you can say something that's been said.
I had consensus, understanding policy, accountability. I think those are some of the words that everybody.
Oh, your mic.
I thought I had it on, I'm sorry. I had the same kind of words that have already been said as far as understanding policy, building consensus, accountability, those kind of things, I think was similar to what's been said.
Anyone else have understanding policy down? I had something similar to that. I thought it was about having people who are informed about policy making. Yeah, policies. Yeah. Education. Yeah, that's another related word.
That's how I meant to say it.
That's great.
I have longevity. I think what we're doing now is going to have ripple effects into the future. What this commission is doing going forward for other New Yorkers, for our children, and we're going to be setting a foundation, so longevity.
That's great. Anyone else have ideas down that related to sort of the future and longer term view of what it will look like in the city?
I had a related term, I guess. I put down education as well, but I put down accessibility and increasing equality, because I think that's what civic engagement really and participation should do. If we're doing it right, we should be creating a more equal and accessible society for more people to get involved and have an impact on what happens in their local community and with local government. So equality and accessibility are 2 related words.
Thank you. Jose.
I chose empowerment because people with disabilities in general don't feel like their voice or vote matter, and I guess that goes to education as well, and they need to understand how their vote really counts. So, you know, just the feeling of empowerment when you're out there civically engaged, so.
That's great. Anyone else? Well, we talked about education. Did anyone else put down, I'm curious, did anyone else put down the word empowerment? Okay. Ownership. Okay. Thank you. Aneta?
Yeah, so I have, mine is actually at this point a repetition. Knowledge and access to information are the levers of power. Personal agency / empowerment. Access and in particular access to decision makers.
Anyone else have anything like sort of access to decision makers, levers of power down? Okay. Great. Anastasia.
I think I said the main ones that I.
Okay.
The only one that I think I would add is increasing collaboration in the way we work with private sector and nonprofit organizations to increase the level of impact we have to help people become empowered and civically engaged. So I think the connections and collaborations and communication is really important in order to achieve those goals.
That's great. Anyone else have cross-sector collaboration? I had that down as well. Lillian, do you want to say what you wrote, a concept that you wrote down on the phone?
Lillian, did you hear us? Sarah, so we are sharing the words, our 3 words that describe civic engagement for us.
Well, the word engagement to me means any type of mobilizing of real public members. I may not be those that do not have a voice, those that do not have access to normal information. And that is to have a job that any leader can do in a community, right? How do you do the other direction? I feel like everyone else has a good fall on Fred, access, education about everything regarding agency to how programs work, but it's, you know, the biggest thing of being public engagement in this group, we're not, we are agents. We have to get out there and try to reach some of those people through this work.
That's great. So mobilizing, the idea of mobilizing, anyone else have that? I put down organizing as a related idea. Yeah. Perfect. Yes. Terrific. Anthony.
I put education, but not necessarily education about policies, but education in terms of, you know, dispelling myths that exist in certain communities about the voting process, right? And a lot of communities of color, like if you have, if you are convicted of a crime, there's a myth that, you know, you can't vote anymore, or, you know, your rights are no longer, as a citizen, you can't participate. But then also creating knowledgeable voters, not necessarily about the candidates, but about the issues that exist in one's community, right? So when people said, oh, I voted for president, I voted for this, but a lot of people didn't vote on the back of the ballot for those initiatives and things of that sort. So education in terms of, you know, not only just policies, but dispelling myths and also creating knowledgeable voters.
Great. Anyone else have? I think we talked about a little bit about education, right? The importance
I
of,
did put in also rights and privileges, which I think you're referencing.
yeah, that's great. Thank you. And
So I also echoed a lot of the same things that people said around participation with all communities, building access, creating access. I think building partnership is something that, with all different stakeholders, is something that I think is really important. But in order to do that, I think the the listening piece has to be there too, because I think all of us are coming into it with sort of our own perspective and lens. And I think the listening piece is actually really important to be able to give, to engage people, is that you have to really understand where they're coming from and where their perspectives are. So,
Well, everything has been said that I could add, but I have community organizing for the common good, a sense of ownership, so you have activities and control around and throughout your community, so that they can have that.
That's great. The ownership, I think, concept is important. You mentioned a word that I'm very curious about, and I feel like we need to talk more about, not necessarily today, but the term common good. What does it mean? I asked somebody about it recently, and they said, oh, I haven't heard that term in a while. And I think it's very central to civic engagement, but I don't think that it's in common usage anymore. Like, people don't have an understanding of what that is. So I feel like part of what we need to do is discuss that more and have people talk about it more. What I'd like to do actually also is, if over the next couple of weeks, it would be great to compile sort of a list of informational resources that we think are important for each other and for other people to be reading and accessing online, as far as getting ourselves informed about what civic engagement is. So I welcome you to sort of contribute ideas of, readings that you think are helpful, videos, music, anything. I mean, because the arts is also a part of civic engagement. So what are the kinds of things that people could be reading and accessing, listening to online, that would inspire them, to get engaged? And it would be wonderful to compile that list and share it on the website. So please, do share your suggestions on that. So part of the reason for this exercise was just, again, to get this conversation started, to see that there are things that you are thinking about in common around this theme of civic engagement. And, we're definitely going to try to continue to speak in this way so that we can, again, create a framework in which we're going to be working in this commission. Part of it, we do have an opportunity to be creative and to think about how we're going to build civic engagement across the city. There's definitely also the next piece of the meeting. I'm going to get into sort of the mandates of the commission. There's a part of it that has been written. There's, the public is asking us to take on certain things, so I would like to spend a little bit of time going through that in the next section. I had sent you sections of the charter that were relevant, so those are also in your packet. And I thought I also put in your packet a single sheet, which I did not email, but I will email subsequently to this meeting, which sort of summarizes on one sheet the things that the charter is asking us to do. So if we could just begin by looking a little bit more in detail at the charter. Could someone, and I guess I'll just turn to, I'll try to pick on someone else. Anthony, could you just read out loud on this handout where it says Chapter 76, Civic Engagement Commission? Could you just read out loud the section 3200, which is a broad summary of the commission?
There shall be a civic engagement commission, the purpose of which is to enhance civic participation in order to enhance civic trust and strengthen democracy in New York City, including through the commission's own initiatives and partnerships with public and private entities related to civic service, volunteerism, stewardship of public spaces, civic education, participatory budgeting, participation in community boards, civic organizations and community groups, and other related activities, and to support and encourage New Yorkers to meaningfully participate in civic life.
So that's a very, very broad, charge that we have. In the next section is defined sort of the membership of who sits on the commission, and in making your appointments to this commission, the offices that appointed you are tasked with thinking about the diversity of New Yorkers to make sure that we have a wide spectrum of people represented. And I think people were also charged with thinking about who are the voices that are typically not represented, who are not accessing, resources, who are not civically engaged in the traditional ways we think about it, and to really make sure that we're trying to tap into those communities as well. So this section gets into the terms of the members. And then also, there's a part of this section, which we will get into a little bit later, related to the duties and responsibilities of the chair. So we'll be talking about the resolution that I sent you a little bit later in the meeting. An important note in this section also talks about how we make decisions in this commission. There's a need for a majority vote to make a decision, and it's a quorum of at least 8 people. To transact the business of this commission. So that's also specified here. The next 2 sections, 3202 and 3203, are really talking about the kinds of programs, procedures, and reporting responsibilities of the commission. So I'm gonna again go through these because I don't want to assume that everybody had a chance to read all of this material, but it's just good for us to all know what's in here. The main thing that I think you need to know that sort of summarizes everything is that by next year, July 1, 2020, the Civic Engagement Commission will need to be ready to implement citywide participatory budgeting and citywide poll site interpretation. Okay, that's in about a year from now. Other mandates that are written up in this charter, such as the community board, supporting community boards, they don't have dates attached to them in the charter, but I think we need to assume that we need to get those on their legs and running as well by July 1, 2020. So there's a lot of work that we need to have happen. Just to get, again, a little bit into details. So in the section where it talks about citywide participatory budgeting, which is under section 3202, number 1 there. It's really talking about, right now we know that the council has about 31 districts that are participating in participatory budgeting, but we want to create a citywide process. And what we're going to do is dedicate some time in a future meeting to get more into depth about what participatory budgeting is and what we need to do. And again, here I want to point out that the charter does talk about the importance of including traditionally underrepresented or underserved groups. And participatory budgeting, as you probably know, is open to anyone 16 or above, regardless of their citizenship status. One of the, a couple of specific tasks that we are charged with here, we need to come up or form an advisory group to recommend to us how the PB process should be developed and implemented citywide. And ideally, we're going to look to try to put together this advisory group by July 1. So, very close to now. We want to think about different ways we can encourage participation, including online participation in public meetings. We'll be working in partnership with city agencies. And again, the goal is to try to get a citywide process going by July 1, 2020. Section 2 here, under 3202, or number 2 rather, talks about the importance of developing, like we said already, cross-sectoral partnerships to strengthen participation. And then number 3 is that we need to present a plan for how the Civic Engagement Commission will address the language access need of all New Yorkers in the programs that the commission runs. So we'll need to put that plan together. And this is a requirement that's typical or expected of many New York City agencies. Number 4, under that section, it's starting at the bottom of that page, looking at poll site language assistance. We will need to work with the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs and also Department of City Planning to come up with how we are going to help people with language access need at poll sites. So prior to November 3rd of 2020, again, that's very far into the future, but I think we need to do this sooner. We have to have an advisory group to recommend how this program will be developed and implemented. By January of 2020, January of 2020, develop and post a methodology to determine how we are going to designate interpreters at poll sites. And the charter specifies that we need to have neutral criteria for picking where we're going to be posting interpreters. So we need to use, this is part of why we're working with GCP and MOIA, data from like a survey like American Community Survey, voter turnout data, location of poll sites. These are some of the data points we'll be using. We also need to work with the Board of Elections to make sure that we're not duplicating their efforts, but rather complementing what they're already doing. As you probably know, they're required by the Voting Rights Act to provide interpretation in Spanish, Mandarin, Cantonese, Korean, and Bangla in various parts of the city. So again, we'll be making sure that we're working hand in hand with them. The city has added additional languages to the ones I just named. These include Russian, Italian, Haitian Creole, Arabic, Urdu, French, and Polish. So part of what we're doing is scaling up what's happening, what the BOE is providing to additional languages. Once that document, the draft methodology is posted, we have to take in public comments, and for at least 30 days. And then we have to publish the final methodology by April 2020. And again, be ready to implement this poll site interpretation program by the next election, November 3rd, 2020. And then there's a charge in the charter to review and update the methodology as well. And there are dates on that, September 1, 2022, and then every 5 years. Charter also talks about training interpreters, developing a plan to notify the public on which languages will be covered, developing a plan to monitor complaints and feedback on how this interpretation program is working. So a lot in here for the poll site interpretation side. On the next page, there is something that talks about partnership with city agencies. That's number 5. We're also tasked with working with city agencies to develop ways that they can increase civic participation in their initiatives, and to create sort of a central portal of information where if people want to get civically engaged with New York City government, they will be able to come and find this kind of information. Then section 3203 begins at the bottom of that page, continues into the next page, really looking at assistance to community boards. Some of you have served on or are serving on community boards. And here what the charter asks us to do is provide urban planning resources and language access resources to community boards, and additional training, which is more open, but language access and urban planning are specifically noted here. And then later, we also need to be thinking about reporting. So as an agency, we'll need to, the commission will need to present a report to the mayor and speaker by September 1, 2021, and annually after that on how all of its programs are working. So how is participatory budgeting, poll site interpretation, community boards, other relevant programming, how it's working. So these are the charges, the public charges we have. Does anyone have any questions or comments about anything we've discussed from the charter? Yeah.
The question on participatory budget, it's my understanding it's still voluntary right now for the council members?
Yes.
That hasn't changed?
Yes.
So that becomes an obstacle as far as assisting those council members that may not want to participate in participatory budget for whatever their reasons.
I mean, it's also an opportunity. I mean, right? We are charged with really trying to spread this citywide. So we are going to have to figure out how to work with the council members who have it running and the council members who don't have it running. We need to do both, and because we want to have a process that is, organized and coordinated across the different offices rather than running two, distinct processes. So we will be working with the council on this. Other questions or comments? How do y'all feel about this charge? Ready? Okay, so so we went through, if there are no other comments, I'm going to go on to the next section of the meeting, which is really looking at going beyond the mandates. So wanted to spend a little bit of time talking here about, as you noticed in the charter, there are parts of it that are not very well, clearly spelled out. So there are opportunities for us to think about what's, these are specific things, but what else do we want to do, right? What other projects or ideas do we want to take on? And I will start, and I'll put some things on the table, but would love to hear other thoughts that you might have. And some things, you mentioned some really important things in our one-on-one, so I'd love to get those shared as well. As you know, when the press release went out, one of the things we committed to doing was meeting within the first 30 days, which we did, so let's give ourselves a hand. We also talked about doing listening sessions. So that's something that we will need to figure out what that is going to look like. And I wanted to actually ask if a smaller subgroup of you, would you be available to help me think about a plan for what those could look like that maybe we could present at the next meeting? So I'm looking for volunteers, maybe 3 to 5 people who might want to, and we'll talk more about this a little later, but who would be willing to work to come up with some kind of plan that we can discuss. Okay. Anyone else? Amy? Holly? Okay. Anastasia? For the listening sessions, yeah. Okay. Annetta, and who else did I? Oh, Murad. Okay, great. Thank you. So I'll reach out to you, to talk more about that. We'll talk a little bit more later about the listening sessions and logistics on that. The other thought was we need to have a good understanding of what's going on currently across the city in terms of civic engagement. So we talked, was talking a little bit about possibly mapping what civic engagement looks like, a geographic map of where things are happening. So that's one other idea. A lot of the charter is looking at language access, and I think we need to also be paying attention. We have great resources here in terms of including the disability community in all of the programs and projects of this commission. We will need your recommendations for who could be serving on the advisory boards, who we should be partnering with and talking to on the ground as far as civic engagement organizations. Media is such an important dimension of civic engagement, so who could we be thinking about in terms of media partnerships? And then it would be really great to get some of this meeting for future meetings to invite speakers to come and present on different topics. I already mentioned participatory budgeting, but if there are topics that you think we should be covering in these meetings, this is another way for us to be thinking more holistically about civic engagement. So again, I want to turn it over to you to hear your reactions to anything I just said or other suggestions that you might have that we didn't mention. Yeah.
Sarah, we talked about this on our one-on-one. I really like the listening tour, but I think if we want to build civic trust, I think it's really important to do a follow-up tour as well. I find that a lot of people say, okay, you came and you heard us, but you didn't really do anything from hearing us. So I think it's important to commit to a follow-up tour as well.
Yes, and you had spoken about how sometimes in these, these listening sessions, often people are asking questions about resources available to them. So something that we could do in the follow-up was to create like a resource fair or something. That was something we discussed. And there are offices that are working on doing that, so we can collaborate with them. But I think the follow-up is going to be important, definitely. Yeah. Lillian, I'm sorry. I wanted to ask you specifically, do you have any thoughts, because I feel like we're going around the room, but not necessarily asking you. So do you have any thoughts on anything that we just said?
Sarah's asking if you have any thoughts about anything that was just discussed.
No. Well, maybe she'll come back if she does. So any other questions, comments, considerations? Yeah.
I wanted to put on the table the idea of collaborating or considering religious institutions as a place to access hard-to-reach communities. I want us to be conscious and cautious about going to our usual networks, which is probably for the folks sitting around the table are already empowered individuals. And so I just want to really challenge us to go beyond that and to consider religious institutions as a place.
Right.
To,
Yeah, Anthony, you had mentioned something about that do you want to say a little bit more about what your thought was on faith institutions? Oh. One of the things that, and maybe you didn't say this, but what I remembered was talking about possibly doing like sermon talking points, because you were talking about, remember the Labor Religion Coalition? Yeah.
In the past, I was a part of a coalition with the Labor and Religion Coalition, and what they did was went through several faith-based institutions, and everyone went with the same message. And at the end of a church or sermon, a church service, someone would be there to give the viewpoint of labor in a 5 to 7 minute presentation, so that the faith-based community also got the importance of that, in that case, of a labor issue. So.
Yeah, so that's called Labor in the Pulpits, is that?
It was called Labor in the Pulpit, that's
yeah.
right.
Yeah, so I mean, that's an idea. Now this community affairs where I work and a bunch of other agencies actually have also started to do these kinds of sort of faith weekends. As you probably know, this past weekend was the Thrive NYC, a mental health weekend of faith, where we tapped into a lot of faith communities. And this is an opportunity, like you said, to create some talking points that either the imam, rabbi, minister, whoever in, the priest can say for themselves in their service, and or have people go and speak at the service. And that's something where you could be involved, right? You could go out into these houses of worship. So you could do sort of like a civic engagement faith weekend type of activity. But I think it's very important what you're saying, to use the networks of faith communities as both to increase participation in the activities such as PB, participatory budgeting, language access, etc., also to raise awareness. You're looking a little skeptical, or thinking maybe. Okay.
I think there's a lot there to unpack it, to work on and develop.
Yes. Yes. That's great. Yeah.
I have a quick question about the advisory boards out of the commission. What is the process that we're going to take to recommend people into that, or have people nominate themselves? And then there isn't an advisory board for community board support. Will there be one created for that?
Well, as far as, let me take the second question first. There's nothing in the charter that tells us we have to do it, right? So if we really want to do it, there's nothing stopping us from doing it. so if we, I mean, we should think more about that and talk about that. For the first one, as to the process of picking who or selecting who is on the advisory committees, I think the charter is specifying that we need to make sure that we have certain groups included, or people who work with traditionally excluded groups represented on the advisory committee. It doesn't really say anything about the number of people or where these recommendations would come from. So that's something we can discuss and figure out. When we were talking one-on-one, I had requested each of you to think about who should serve on these committees. So we do need to develop sort of a, a process, and the resolution is going to cover that a little bit as well. But yeah. Does it?
Is there an opportunity for the commission to work closely with the Board of Elections on how they reach out to individuals and how they set out new policies? Like, they're about to announce the 7, I think, or 20 new early voting sites. And in this election process, I don't think anyone was really asked how it's going to affect everyone or how people are going to reach those polling sites. Also, they're about to bring out a new ballot marking machine, and they did not get anyone's input. It's just, here it is, and this is what it's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is an expectation that we are going to work with the BOE on the programs that we're implementing. So I think we need to build that relationship. Yeah. Eve?
So just like the last Charter Revision Commission kind of gave birth to this commission, there's another Charter Revision Commission that's going on right now, and they're definitely taking a look at things like the requirement for a citywide plan, and I think we, as a body, might want to keep an eye on what's happening and see if there are ways to connect our mandate with what's coming up.
Important, yeah. Anyone else?
Sarah, we talked a little bit about, there was a Harvard study, and I was just trying to find quickly who did it, but a lot of work about how diversity actually works against civic engagement. And so I was wondering if we could maybe have the person who conducted that study from Harvard come and talk to us about what he found and why diversity and the most diverse places seem to have the least civic engagement, because we, as we know, in New York City, we're one of the most diverse places in the world. So what are we up against in terms of getting people engaged?
Yeah, I think that's a really important idea that we definitely need to look at. And I think the mapping is part of that, right? To look where civic engagement is happening across the city and to really explore why it might not be happening in other places, but also what is facilitating where it is happening. So I think what you're saying is it would be great to have that, whatever the resource you mentioned, and to spend a little bit more time thinking through that. Because that actually is very relevant to all the things we're charged with working on, right? It's relevant to participatory budgeting, it's relevant to language access, relevant to community boards. How do community boards reach the people who are in their areas, right? And what are the barriers to effectively reaching people, making sure their voices are heard in these local bodies? So that's very helpful. Thank you. Holly?
I think this is going to come to your next point on the agenda, but I just, I need a clear understanding of how we contact people, how we let people know who we are, what our role is, because even since the press release came out a few weeks ago, I've gotten several emails, from colleges and other nonprofits asking me, what do you know? When can you come and speak to me? But I need to know specifically what that role is and how to legitimize what maybe my role is in this, in my borough, you know, with the contacts that I know. So I don't know if you can speak to that.
Yeah, I was gonna say a little bit about it, and it's definitely in the next section. I just wondered if there are any other thoughts before we get into the next segment of the meeting on ideas that are beyond mandates. Yeah. You can say have more than one idea.
Well, it's more of a question, but I was wondering, what is your thinking around, this is a lot of different pieces.
Yes.
And I'm thinking that perhaps committees, and I don't know how frequently we will be meeting. I mean, you just invited folks to join the committee to help you think through
The listening session.
the listening
Yeah.
sessions. But I'm wondering, as we proceed, and not everybody has a passion or interest or expertise in the particular areas, that we may consider setting up committees within committees of commissioners to dive deep into a particular issue. So I guess it's a recommendation and a question.
Yeah, great recommendation. It sounds to me like people are ready to move into the next section, which is looking more at the commission business. So I'll just go into that and start with Holly's question. The first thing I wanted to emphasize about your roles and responsibility is just really the importance of participating in these meetings as the basic sort of requirement. And you're all here at this table because you're bringing really important expertise and perspectives. And we are going to need to lean on each other to really build this Civic Engagement Commission, because it doesn't exist right now. So we haven't set the exact frequency of meetings, but I'm pretty sure that I'm going to need to rely on you a lot more in the beginning as we're, building things out. So noted in the charter, you saw also that we need to have a quorum to transact business of the commission. That's at least 8 people. And Lillian wasn't able to join in person today, so we're on the call with her. But just for future information, if you're on a call, it doesn't count as attendance, and it can't count towards voting on something. So just, keep that in mind as we're thinking about sort of how we're going to work on this. You asked questions about representing the commission in public and, having meetings and doing that. And I think we need to develop some guidelines for how to do that, but I think it's very important for you to be a resource in your neighborhoods, communities, for the commission, and be able to take in input and provide information about the commission's programs. So again, since we're just like barely a baby, we're gonna need to develop some of those guidelines going forward. And the law department's actually working on developing some bylaws for us that, we will then consider in a future meeting. So I don't have exact answers to those questions today, but we're good. What I did was, when we were having our one-on-ones, people raised questions, so I put them all in one place, and I'm hoping that, over the course of the next couple of weeks, we'll come back with more definite answers on those questions. One of the questions that was raised was also about sort of using our personal emails and things like that, and I wanted to say that as a public entity, we are subject to Freedom of Information law, so this includes your email account, so we're going to be providing you with your commission email account so that you can keep the business of the commission separate from your personal business. Yeah. And then also, we'll talk more subsequently about, the nature of open meeting like this, right? Public meeting, people can come and listen, comment. We'll need to make sure people have access to what happened today later. So we will do that more. And if you ever feel like we're not doing enough, or if I'm missing something, I want you to feel comfortable to just remind me to keep talking through whatever questions we have. But we will also have a privileged meeting with the law department just to get some of these, details worked out, and hopefully maybe also do one-on-one emails with people just to answer some of the questions that are more specific to individuals. Yeah.
On the note of emails and the listening tour, I was wondering if we'll also get business cards or calling cards. And the reason I bring that up is I know often at public meetings, there are people who do not want to speak publicly, but will come in running up to see you afterwards, and they want to send you an email with their concern or to engage with you that way. And I just find that doing a one-on-one engagement is really important. And I think if you're out talking to groups, to have a business card, it really helps to then continue the dialogue.
Yeah, I had some other people had raised that with me as well, and I definitely have that on the list of things to work out.
And one thing I would just say about the business card aspect is to make sure that they're also accessible. It's easy to work with the mayor's office, some persons with disabilities, to get those cards also in print and then brailled, just with an email address or a name, because if we are interacting with the disabled community in various components, we want to make sure that everybody has access to our information, and that's something that's easily done.
Okay, thank you. Black and white. Okay. So part of getting all this stuff to happen is that we need to designate my duties and responsibilities so that we can start operating as a commission. So I would like to move in now into the section, into the resolution. So this resolution, we'll be referring in this section to this resolution as well as the memorandum of understanding between the Civic Engagement Commission and the Department of Information Technology and Telecommunications. So this resolution, just to go through it, summarizes the work that was described in the charter that we just went through, including the beginning of it is just, describing the history and establishment of the commission, and also the nature of its work, which we read aloud, section 3200. And then we are moving in the second part of this after the whereases. It talks about how section 3201 of the charter designates the chair of the commission to serve as an executive director and be charged with organizing the commission's office, have the authority to employ, assign, and superintend the duties of the officers and employees who are going to be essential for carrying out the commission's mission. And the resolution is delegating to the chair and to staff assigned by the commission certain duties and responsibilities. These include, number one, submitting the plans and initiatives related to the work of this commission for the commission's review, right? And some of these include the participatory budgeting, developing of community partnerships, language access, poll site interpretation, programming with city agencies. These are all the things we read from the charter sections, assistance to community boards preparing reports. So it's designating the chair to take care of these duties and responsibilities. And then also, once these plans and initiatives are submitted, to report to the commission on these initiatives as they're implemented. The chair is also tasked with recruiting the candidates who would be part of the PB and Language Access Advisory Committees, and to present the proposed candidates for such committees to you as a commission to make a decision on. And then enter into agreements with other city agencies. And an example of this is the Memorandum of Understanding, which is really, since this commission is a new entity, this Memorandum of Understanding allows DO-IT to help us perform some of the essential functions that we'll need to get going. If you look closely at this MOU, it's giving DO-IT the ability to help us with personnel services, equal employment opportunity services, agency contracting, budget administration, IT office space and facility management, and other functions. So this is really important to get support for the commission. So that's sort of an example of the kinds of agreements that we might enter into with other city agencies. That's section 4 of this resolution. And then it also tasks the chair with making sure that we are all operating in terms of meetings, determining locations, providing meetings, preparing, distributing agendas, et cetera. So are there any questions or comments or thoughts about this resolution? Well, one of the things is that, I will be hiring staff. We have 6 lines for this, for the commission, in addition to my 7th line, and I'm working on putting together, finalizing the job descriptions, which relate to the different mandates. So those will be published fairly soon. But I think there are going to be a lot of opportunities for the commissioners to assist to the degrees that you are able to. I'm not, can't ask you to do the work of the staff, but certainly need your ideas and support on everything going forward. And the other thing I wanted to mention about space is we actually do have a space. We're going to be housed in 255 Greenwich, which if you walk on or know Greenwich, there's a Target there. So it's the same building as a Target. And it is in the office of the Chief Technology Officer, and there's also DO-IT staff in that building. I believe OMB has offices in that building as well. So is a cluster of desks there, so that's where we'll be seated. Yeah, Eve.
I just have a question. I completely understand the need to have kind of an agency that provides these services. I'm just wondering about the selection of DO-IT as that agency. What?
That's a really good question to which I do not know the answer. Yeah, because I think this was sort of set into motion long before, the announcement was made, and I wasn't a part of those conversations. But I mean, so far DO-IT has been phenomenal in all the assistance they've provided, and also generously opening up, the office space for us to share. So I was actually very heartened when I went to visit the space. The Chief Technology Officer office and DO-IT, I think, is going to be really helpful in sort of the online engagement that we have. Apparently, the CTO is already engaged in democracy-related initiatives, so it's going to be great to find out what those are and see how we can leverage those for the work of his commission.
I too had that question when I saw that today. In fact, I reached out to a couple of people. It was curious because usually that's OMB or other organization, DCAS, that'll handle that. I didn't realize you inherited. In fact, I thought maybe it might have been something particular to your roles in the past, that you had a specific relation or you understood how this would be a better served thing. I mean, DoIT's an IT technology. That's their specialty. And it was a little strange that they're going to be taking on all this human resources and other elements, which, again, it seems, I'm not quite sure why their expertise falls into that place.
Yeah, so if you'll note on the MOU, sorry, for each of the services, it talks about how DoIT will be working with the Civic Engagement Commission in fulfilling these areas of responsibility. So it's important to remember that the commission will also have its own staff, right? So as far as human resources, you know, and personnel, there'll be somebody who is going to be tasked with that, who will be a staff member of the commission. But there are technical aspects of this that it's actually very relieving to have an agency take on. For instance, we won't be needing to take on, you know, how you fill out the contracts, because DoIT will help us with that. Every agency has these kinds of personnel who are taking care of it for their agency. So what we're doing is asking the people in DoIT who are already doing these things for DoIT to help CEC with that, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, at the end of the day, as the executive director day-to-day on this and the chair of the commission, I think it's your comfort level that has to fall into place, that the relationship and the information they're giving you is what you want.
Yes.
And obviously, we're not going to be duplicitous and set up our own HR on this one and all the other different departments, so that's fully understood. What gives me comfort is the last one, which is item 5. It says, so you have a termination possibility. So if down the road you start to see that you're not getting what you're expecting, then you're going to be able to have the opportunity to voice your concern and either have it resolved or terminate the agreement. We'll have to go to somebody else. But that was the first thing that hit my mind, is that it was very surprising that DoIT was the lead agency to take this very encompassing type of thing, which, like, you know, what was said, it's either DCAS or other agencies that are going to be handling that. So, again, if the chair and chair/executive director is comfortable with the relation going forward, then I don't want to speak for all the other commissioners, but I guess, you know, it's more your day-to-day to feel that comfort that we're getting what we need from the agency, whether it's the title we expected from day one or if they could just fulfill the job.
Yeah, and I have to say that so far I've been extremely impressed and very grateful for the support that DoIT has provided so far. So we will certainly, you know, keep that in mind going forward. Yeah, and there are opportunities to amend this agreement, of course. Are there any other questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution.
All right, so we're going to move to a voice vote on the resolution, right? So all in favor, would you say aye? We're going to count, and also, I guess, raise your hand too, because we're going to count. Or maybe just, yeah, that's fine.
Yes. Aye.
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 An aye. Okay, so hearing no one's opposed to this resolution, so you have hereby approved to charge me with the duties of the chair and executive director of this commission. So I'm looking forward to taking on that responsibility and working with all of you to make sure that we are on target with what we are charged with doing by the public, and also the charge that we charge ourselves with doing, I guess. Let's see. This meeting is going incredibly smoothly. I'm very, very grateful and impressed. Maybe the next section will get a little bit bumpy, because I think we need to figure out when we're going to meet next. And ideally, you know, it's so important to have as many people participate in these meetings as possible. For the reasons I already mentioned, the importance of this entity just starting, really looking to you for guidance, and making sure that we are able to transact business with the majority. So I had sent out a poll, you know, asking people for their availability. And of course, it's incredibly difficult to coordinate the schedules of so many people. So I wanted to just sort of let you know what the survey results said, okay? And to try to figure out what might be an appropriate date, or whether we need to go back to the drawing board and put out some new dates in order to increase the participation. So the date that had the most votes was Wednesday, June 19th, 3 to 5. And there were 8 people who said they could do that date. And I'm just wondering, for the people who didn't select that date, can you absolutely not participate on June 19th?
You said 3 to 5 p.m.?
Yes, it would be 3 to 5.
Depending on how the state legislator ends its session,
Oh,
I
right.
may or may not. That's the last day of session.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, something I need to do is also, you know, keep in mind as we're scheduling things like this, I think, right? Like, when is the state in session? When is, I don't know, council, other meetings that are going on? So if you want to send me suggestions like that of like general things to keep in mind for calendar, that would be helpful.
Can I also just make one comment about scheduling?
Yeah.
I think right now, finding the next meeting date is going to be fine. I think in the future, picking one date of the week where we say, you know, this Monday or whatever Monday it is.
Second.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
someone
if we
else,
can
yeah.
change it from, you know, having one meeting that's during business hours and then one meeting in the evening so that people who want to participate in the commission, not necessarily the commissioners, but the general public can participate, would be helpful.
So to alternate, you're saying?
Yeah, so it can be the same date that gets selected, but the times alternate so that the general public has the opportunity of coming during the workday or in the evening.
Okay. So if we were to, that's a very good point. So establishing a calendar of meetings ahead of time, right? So I think in order to do that, I need to have a good sense of people's schedules, right? And if there are, for instance, we would not do a meeting on Friday. It's just like not a good day, right? But if people are, you know, have other commitments that we should definitely know about, because you will never be able to make a meeting on Wednesday at X time because you're teaching a class. You know, kind of need to know those things as well. And I think on the survey form, I asked you to fill that out, and I'll go back and read those more carefully. But the other dates that were chosen by a lot of people, well, there's really only one date, because one was June 27th, and it was chosen by 7 people. And we need to have at least 8 people in a meeting. So June 19th and June 27th are the dates that were most selected. But my thought is that I think it's better to have more people in the meeting. So that's part of why I was asking for the people who cannot make June 19th or didn't select it. Is your conflict, you know, unavoidable, or could you adjust if we were to go with that date? You can adjust.
There's also something symbolic about June 19th, which is it's Juneteenth. So it's a symbolic date in terms of what we're doing.
I should be able to make it.
Sorry?
I should be able to make it.
Okay. Anyone else? I don't.
I just wanted, I think I put this in the form, but I can make either date. So either the 19th or the 20th. If it has to be switched to the 27th, I can accommodate that switch. I can make both of them.
Okay. Oh, yes, that's the other thing too, because 7 people chose the 27th. So again, for the people who didn't choose it, do you have an unavoidable conflict? You couldn't make it on the 27th. Okay. Hmm?
I think it's the last day of school, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's what I was worried about.
Day
Okay.
before.
Can we get a new set of dates and then just prioritize it that way so we can move forward with the date, the last, I think, the 3 top dates that you have? If
2/6.
you can just send that out again. And
Send
then-
out the 3 top dates again?
And then, because we had like a bunch of different options to choose from, I think it would streamline. Yeah. Rank choice.
Okay, so you're saying rather than deciding now, I should send out another email?
Or we can decide now, whichever works.
No, I'm just asking. I'm just asking what because I'm trying to figure out, good method to do this.
I think you should send out a second email.
If we could decide now.
Yeah.
Okay.
July is going to get crazy. It's
We haven't even come to July. We need to have a July, we may have to have a July meeting. Well, let's pick, so far, the most people who can make is the 19th, Wednesday, June 19th.
I think that's fine.
So let's do that, and I will, we will find a place to meet. I don't know if we can do it here again, we'll see. But then to come up with a calendar, right? Are Mondays and Wednesdays, like, should we try to do it on a Monday? Like the 3rd Monday of every month or something like this.
Well, the issues are often you have holidays on Monday, so that will throw a wrench in
Yeah.
the system. And also, for me, Mondays are a little difficult, but
Oh, right,
I
that's
can
right.
work around
Yes,
it. but-
you adjusted for today, I remember now. So Monday, so what about Wednesdays?
Not the first Wednesday of the month, because that's my community board meeting. Yeah.
Not the first Wednesdays. Okay, just in the app, so Wednesday, community boards meet, so some.
And Thursday, Wednesday, Monday, and Thursday.
Wednesday, Monday, and Thursday.
So
But it's a certain day of it's like the first,
Yes, it's the first day, it's usually the first Monday or the first Wednesday or the first Thursday.
so we should never meet the first week of any month. That's what it sounds like. Because that's when community boards are meeting. So, and it sounds like Monday's not a great day. Friday's not a great day, so we're narrowing down our options. Tuesday,
I mean, if we're ever going to meet in the evening, I can only meet on a Wednesday or Thursday evening.
okay, that's good to know. If we let's say do this alternate thing. So Wednesday or Thursday. Well, this is good. We're narrowing down, we're drilling down to what we're doing.
Maybe
And-
the 2nd or 3rd Wednesday or Tuesday might.
I
Thursday.
think Wednesdays. Yeah. I think if it comes down to it, the second week, a Wednesday or a Thursday work best for me. Just because of I know I suggested this of like changing the times, but those 2 dates in that second week of each month, I'm pretty good in
The second week of
the month.
the month.
I just wanted to say that I can never really do a Thursday or a Friday.
Right.
Because I have really important commitments that I can only fulfill on those 2 days of the business week. So Wednesdays would be great. I can meet any time of the day as long as it's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. But
Okay. So far, we're getting close here. Second week of the month, Wednesday. Any issues?
I won't be able to give you a better picture until I know the classes that I have being
Oh,
taught in the
right.
fall. The other concern that I have is the 3 to 5 time frame, and then the evening time frame is very difficult as a parent to have to pick your kids up from school.
Yeah.
You know, and if you do have some people that are parents that might want to come to one of these meetings, it's going to make it really not doable, you know, for that. So I don't know if it's possible to maybe have one of those afternoon meetings a little bit earlier, because I have like an hour and a half commute to get back to Staten Island, and I want to make sure that I'm there to pick my kids up.
Yeah.
That's important to me.
How do people feel about meeting earlier in the day?
So at Pratt, we have a lot of standing meetings on Tuesday and Wednesday mornings. But
Oh.
generally speaking, I'm done by 12.
By 12?
Yeah, and can get to Lower Manhattan by 12:30.
Yeah.
Still not good for you.
Mr. Killian, I have quite a busy agenda for today, basically 9 to 5. It's really challenging situation for me, so if we can either first thing in the morning or late in the day for work best for me. I know that people have all the challenges, but remember we don't have jobs, so it's gonna be very difficult for me to try to keep it seat. I travel to Albany and sometimes even other parts, including DC.
Yeah. So you're saying first thing in the morning is better for you?
Or evening.
Or evening? Right.
I mean, that's another option. Perhaps we rotate the meetings in the different boroughs.
Yeah.
What that means in terms of like the logistics around the open meeting piece, but
that also might be an issue in terms of accessibility.
Yeah.
Because the like physical accessibility, one of the things that I work on for the speaker's office is improving accessibility, subway, transportation and all that. And it's very difficult even for me to get down to my office at 250 Broadway 3 days a week because of transportation issues. So I would love to be able to meet in the outer boroughs, but practically that would be very difficult for me to do just because of, from an accessibility standpoint, which I can't control, so.
Yeah, I was thinking on that note that I think all actually borough halls, so like Staten Island Borough Hall, Brooklyn Borough Hall, Bronx, Queens, I guess this is Manhattan Borough Hall, are technically supposed to be ADA compliant. I'm not sure if getting to them is very convenient.
That's what she said.
But I do think that we should think about, like, we should definitely go to Staten Island at some point and hear what folks are saying there as well as other boroughs. But I do hear that there's like a challenge in doing that.
It's a big challenge, and, you know, quite honestly, that would be just, you know, I would not be able to continue to serve on the commission if that was one of the, you know, the options of having to travel just between time and accessibility issues. You know, it just wouldn't work. I just wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah,
You know.
you're saying that to do it later in the day or evenings, if that's when we always did it, or?
I'm saying just if you have it in the other boroughs to travel
I see
around
what
with the
you're saying.
accessibility standpoint, it would take
Yeah.
so much time and even planning and making sure subways are accessible, or, you know, how we would be able to get there. You know, it would eat up a whole day, you know,
Right.
for us. And as a volunteer position, there's just no way.
Yeah, I mean, there's actually a requirement, I think the open meeting laws require us to make sure that we are accessible to people, so we definitely will be keeping that in mind. I just want to go back for a second, don't want to, you know, spend too much time on it, but, because we're almost at the end of the meeting, but just to revisit the setting the calendar going forward. I sort of heard the second week of the month usually Wednesdays work, right? I also heard that we don't want to do it too late because for people who have parenting responsibilities, it'll be tough. I also heard, on the other hand, that we want to try to have commission meetings possibly in the evening to allow the public who might not be able to make other times to come and participate. So I'm just trying to think about how we set the calendar on that. Does it make sense to do a meeting? You said 12 is around the time, but does it make sense to have a meeting, I don't know, between 12 and 2, but kids get out of school at 3, so it's a little bit, I'm just trying to figure out how to build out. What would you recommend, Holly, as a sort of a meeting time? What would work for you, and then we can see.
I would say just 11, would be good, 11 to 11:30. Worst case scenario, if I had to duck out, just right before the end of the meeting during the question, period, if there was any other new business, then I would have to, leave to get out, to go back. But I think that it is something, civic engagement, that you want other parents to be able to come and visit. So if you're going to alternate and have 2 meetings a month, or every other month you're going to have, meet from 11 to 2, and then the next month you're going to meet this time or an evening, just give us options, that I'm able to accommodate both.
Okay. So if we did the second, and I think what we're talking about here is really July now, but going forward, the second Wednesday of July, if we met, just looking at my calendar.
And Sarah, just for clarification, we're talking about, these are meetings of the commissioners. This is separate from the listening tour.
Is it separate from the listening tour? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. July 10th. So, how do you think we could do an 11 to 1 meeting on July 10th? Is that good for everyone? Lillian, I'm not sure if that works for you. I'm hoping it does. Yeah, it's true. For
more flexible month.
Yes. Okay. So,
Also, one quick question.
Yes.
Are we meeting every month as a commission?
right now, I think we would need to plan on meeting a little more frequently. Over time, I think we may not need to. But I want to just get at least the next few meetings down, and then, we can assess.
Okay.
Is that okay with everyone?
Yeah.
Okay. So the next meeting will July, what was the date? July
10th.
July 10th. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is send you a calendar for the following months, and then, we can just see how you're all doing with that. All right? That work? To quickly talk a little bit before we close on the listening sessions, I thought we should start thinking about, and the people who are going to work with me on this, we can talk more about it, but I think we need to be thinking about what we want these listening sessions to look like, right? And part of it is we want to understand where people are with the mandates. Like, what do they know about participatory budgeting? Do they have relationship to their community board? What are their concerns about language access? We should be able to frame the kind of meeting we have. And I think one other thing for you to think about is whether you would like to host a listening session. Whether you'd like to run a listening session. And if we want to go that route, we can come up with a protocol that you could follow in doing these listening sessions if you'd like. So I'm not making anyone do it. I just want you to think about whether it's something you'd like to do. And you can let me know. And also just a general question is like, when is the best time to do the next one? Should we actually start in the summer or start in June? You know, or is it better to wait until the fall to start these? I mean, personally, I always like to, I think sooner is always better, but again, interested in your thoughts.
I think you're going to have a lot of people on vacation during these summer months, you know, and a lot of people that are going to be doing different things, you know, in the summertime. September, you're going to have that whole influx of back to school, you know, and things aren't really going to calm down until October, you know, where you're going to have that done. I mean, that's just reality. Even a lot of these nonprofits and these businesses do not plan things during the summer months because you never know who's here, who's away. You're going into July 4th, summer camp, family vacations. I mean, if you're going to optimize having people attend, you may have to wait till October. And you are so new, it seems like you have a ton of other things to do prior than us starting these listening sessions.
Other thoughts?
I mean, I agree. I was going to say that a lot of even industry, even if we're not thinking about school and family, a lot of industries kind of shut down in the summer. So I think because participation is so important, I would like to say that sooner is better because I agree with that as well. But I agree that the fall is probably the better time just because so many people leave the city frequently in the summer and are just not around and go on sabbaticals, so.
I will say that there's never a great time to start. The big thing is getting the communication out, and a lot of times you get the communication out and people still can't come, but the communication is out there, and so there's the follow-up. So I think, you know, if you're talking about having these big public meetings, but then also an opportunity for commissioners to run meetings, then I think we can talk about how that can work to serve us in terms of getting the information out there and having enough opportunities to then get the participation that we're looking for. So I think we need to figure out what the balance is on that.
Yeah, and I think the listening sessions, we haven't sort of really specified how big they need to be, right? They could also be smaller conversations. So I think there might be different ways to do these listening sessions as well. I think it would be great to have large public meetings too, but yeah, did you want to, Annetta?
Yeah, no, respecting what Holly just said, I also want to say that I think in every community is different. I can imagine my community, for example, tends to be around in the summertime, and that tends to be a really good time to access disconnected community members. And so, you know, I don't know that it necessarily has to be a big public splash to kick them off. I would argue that coming out of the gate, it's really important to start talking to the community, to start hearing from the community, and I think we can build them up. And so by the fall, when there's probably more, you know, the opportunity for broader participation, we can do the big ones. I would love to.
That's an interesting idea.
I would love to, speaking for my community, both geographic and ethnic, in Queens and Northwest Queens, South Queens, Southeast Queens, I would love to see smaller conversations start happening sooner rather than later.
That's
yeah,
great.
I echo that too. Our community doesn't go anywhere in the summer, and it is the easiest and most convenient time to engage them. And that would be the Arab, Muslim, Southwest, South Brooklyn area, as well as, you know, we can definitely reach out to other parts of the city to set up some conversations. So I think one great next step would be figuring out what the protocol would be.
Yeah.
And I think being very descriptive, as in what that should look like, how many people or commissioners should be in attendance, is it just necessarily at least one? And then what is it that we should be taking away from those conversations and bringing back to the larger commission?
Right.
If I might just add something that I meant to say earlier, is that I would love to see us have some plan around the engagement of young people.
Yes.
And so this sort of discussion about listening tours, I'm thinking about young people and the summertime.
Mm-hmm.
In communities across the city, I think it's like the best time to connect with them.
Right.
But I'd love to have us have an intentional conversation around youth engagement in this whole mission.
Yes, very important.
And also that brings us to budget. Do we have some money to help us get some of this organization? Because with young people, it's always nice to have a little something to help pull them in, whether that's entertainment or food or something.
I'm going to look more into that, and I can provide you with additional information in the next meeting. Yeah, because I'm still sort of learning what all that looks like. So it sounds to me like there's generally agreement that we want to try to start maybe the smaller listening sessions over the next immediate future, and then maybe build up to a larger one when there are more people around in the fall. So I'll work with the committee or the people who said volunteered to help think about what these listening sessions would look like, and then we'll try to present something for you all to review next time, so we can sort of start those conversations. That's really great.
And just quickly, Sarah, is
Yeah.
there someone from the Community Affairs Department who can help us as well? Because they set up a lot of meetings. So is there someone who could help advise us, like, what is the best way of doing that?
Well, we'll definitely work with the other city agency partners. That's something we're actually required to do. So I'll be talking to Community Affairs about doing that. And I think it's going to be important to let Community Affairs and other agencies to know what we're doing anyway, because part of what we're trying to do is amplify their work as well in the process. So, yeah. So, okay, this is wonderful. I really appreciate all of your input. So just,
Sarah,
yeah.
I just had one more comment.
Yeah.
I know we were talking about potentially like changing the times of the meeting to enhance participation. And you mentioned something about that eventually people will be able to see these meetings on a live stream. And I think going forward in terms of being able to engage most of the public, I think for my community and Jose's community, just thinking about how we can maybe amplify the use of technology so that
Yes.
a larger portion of society and our communities can participate without actually having to be here physically is important. It might help us in terms of being able to schedule meetings, and if there's something that we can create that people can send in questions or comments digitally without them having to attend, that might address the issues for families and parents and the elderly, young people, disabled people who might not be able to attend. If we can figure out a way for people to digitally join the meetings or participate without having to be here physically, that could solve a lot of the issues we were discussing in terms of choosing a meeting time.
That's a really, really wonderful point. Thank you. Okay, so just as we're closing, I wanted to ask if anyone had any kind of announcement or any other information they'd like to share with the rest of the commissioners, if anything. You mentioned youth, engaging youth, and I was sent an email by somebody who's hosting a town hall. Why vote? Why vote, as in why, like the U, why in youth. A town hall organized on Tuesday, May 28th around the youth agenda. So I will send you information on that in case you want to share it with people and or attend. It's from 5 to 7:30, happening on West 22nd Street. And it's looking at voting and young people, I think. So that's that. And let's see, what else? I will send out the video so you can also share it once it's posted with anyone you think would be interested. And are there any, before we close, are there any concerns or issues that we didn't discuss that you think we should bring up at the next meeting? Before you walk out, please do leave your index cards with me so we can synthesize the things that you said. And so now I'm going to just formally conclude the first meeting of the Civic Engagement Commission. I want to thank each of you for attending and really look forward to seeing you at the next time. Thank you so much.